Welcome, everybody. This is Coach Bill from the Better Ball Player. Hey, welcome to the Harada Method for baseball players. So, hey, I want to start by making this announcement. So, I want to be honest with you. When I first heard about this, my reaction was, uh, okay, great, another system. And then I started to look into it and I realized that this just wasn't another drill. It's not another swing thought. It wasn't just a new launch angle tip or such. So what this is a goal achievement system that was used by a 15-year-old kid in Japan. That kid grew up to be Shohei Ohtani. So, yep, that's the most notable instance of it. And so today, that's what we're going to talk about. So, my caveat here is this may not be for everyone. But if you're looking for an organized, deliberate path to achievement, then this might be for you. So, whether it's in baseball or another sport, whether it's in business or your personal career, please give this its due diligence and let's see where it can take you. Okay, so here's what Module 1 is going to cover. This is where this method came from. We're going to talk about how Otani actually used it and what the 5 stages are. So by the time you finish this module, you'll understand why most players train hard and still don't improve, and you'll know exactly what's missing. Okay, so let's get into this here a little bit, and we'll talk about that. So what I want you to do is I want you to picture the worst school in Osaka, Japan. Right, and Osaka is the second largest city in Japan. And what we're talking about the ghettos, the slums of Japan. We're talking about the bottom of the barrel, failing grades, no discipline, no wins, no morale. Coaches are frustrated, teachers are frustrated, the parents are checked out. And into this steps a track and field coach who has just graduated. His name is Takashi Harada. This is where he shows up. Now, Takashi had a brother. His brother was one of the Japan's best athlete. By Takashi's own words, he was not to that level, but still good enough that he was able to perform track at university. And so he graduates. He's a teacher. He's assigned to a school here in Japan. It is the 320th rated school of 320. Okay, that's where Takashi's going to show up. All right. So as he does now, Takashi does not come in with a revolutionary new training method. He doesn't come in with a new drill. He's showing up. He's trying to do his best. So he's working diligently at it, but nothing is showing up for the kids. And so he sits back and he starts to read, he starts to study, he gets his hands on everything he can about improvement. He's reading John Wooden, he's reading Stephen Covey, he's reading the best coaches and the thinkers in the world. And what he comes up is with this. It wasn't about talent, it was about installing a system. And so he tries to install this system when he has fits and starts and stops, and he's still struggling with it. So stay with me because this is where it's going to become important. Okay? So most athletes, and I see this with our hitters all the time, operate on effort alone. They work hard, they show up, they take their swings, and when the swings don't improve, the coaches blame the mechanics and the players blame the coaches. And nobody stops to ask whether there's a system in place or not. So Harada figured out there wasn't, at least not for most people. So he had to build one. He took everything that he learned and turned it into a structured method for setting a goal, understanding why you want it, analyzing where you really are, planning the specific steps to get there, and then doing the daily work to make that happen. And we'll break all of that down a little bit later. Okay, but here's the punchline for right now. The kids at that failing school in Osaka, started following Harada's method. And within a few years, they were winning national track and field championships. They went from being the very bottom, very, very bottom, the last of 320. Takashi created 19 Olympic medal winning athletes. Okay. He ended up coaching for 20 years. So that is just an amazing thing. The turnaround actually was very interesting, um, in the sense that he realized that it wasn't about the athletics at all. It realized he had to win their minds. So a lot of this, and we're going to look at this when we get to Otani, is dealing with what happens with mindset. Okay, so what happens is, they're winning these national track and field championships. It's the same kids, the same neighborhood. There's no talent transplant. It's the all that has been different here is they've added a system. So here's the deal: it's the same thing we're dealing with in baseball. I work with good kids. I work with hardworking kids, players who show up every day and grind, and a lot of them are still stuck. They're still late on fastballs. They're still freezing on off speed. They go from coach to coach. They go from team to team, collecting swing tips like baseball cards, and still they're looking lost in a game. So it's not a talent problem. It's not a work ethic problem. It is a systems problem. Okay? So, what we have to be able to do is to install that system, and that's what we're fixing. Okay, that's why we're here. And by the way, this isn't about replacing what we're already doing. The right now timing work, the EV principles, the stuff we teach about reading pitch speed, all of that fits inside the system. We're not throwing anything out. We're building a structure that makes everything else actually stick. So now you know where this came from. So, all right, so it comes from Takashi Harada. It comes from the 1970s in Japan. It comes from a system he creates to help his students not only to overcome the poverty of finance, but the poverty of mind, thinking that, yes, by doing something constructive for others, that they can pull themselves up. And that's exactly what he did. So, what I would like to do is let me ask you something right now. All right, let me ask you something. If Shohei, a 15-year-old Shohei was here before anyone outside, um, let me get him up here. So, before anyone outside of his hometown had ever heard of him, what do you think he was doing? Do you think he was taking extra cuts? Do you think he was watching video? Do you think he was lifting? And I would say, yeah, he was probably doing all of those. But there's one thing that he did that almost nobody talks about. Okay, he sat down and he made a plan, not a wish list, not a bucket list, a structured, let me see if I can pull that up here, a structured plan, specifically written, that broke down exactly what kind of player he was going to become and exactly what he was going to do every single day to become that player. This is that actual plan that he wrote. That's the actual notebook paper that he did. I don't know if you can look up here at the very, very top. It says December the 6th, 2010. This is a 15-year-old about to be sophomore that is writing this. Okay, so let me pull this up in the translated, how it comes out. This is what it looks like. Okay, so what Shohei did, he took Takashi's method, specific tool called the Open Window 64, and that's what we're looking at, an Open Window 64 chart. And Don't worry, you're going to end up building this down in module 3 when we get there. So anyhow, Shohei sat down, he makes up this list, and he decides what kind of player he was going to become and exactly what he was going to do every single day to become that player. So here's the basic structure. There was a clear center square, and if you look in this, you may not be able to distinguish it, but it says get drafted first overall. Okay? Around that square, there were 8 pillars, the 8 areas that you will need to develop to hit that goal. And then each of those 8 pillars has 8 subpillars, 8 grids of 8 tasks, hence 64, right? 8 times 8, 64 totals, hence the open window 64 chart. 64 tasks, 1 goal. All right. So, what is interesting is of his 8 pillars, Shohei talks about speed. I'm looking right in the middle and I'm looking right around the yellow square. He's talking about speed. He's talking about stamina, right? His conditioning, his being able to go deep into games. He's talking about mental toughness and strength, right? Composure under pressure, staying in the moment. He's talking about pitching control, the command of all his pitches. He's talking about character and human development, who he was becoming as a person, not just a player. And he talks about karma. And this is where it gets interesting, right? A 15-year-old kid who puts karma on a development chart. And here's what's wild. He picks up on some things. He sits down, he thinks about it, and asks, what does a lucky person do? Right? What does a person with good karma do? And he came up with things like pick up trash for others, be kind to people who can't do anything for you, show up early, acknowledge other players, have good sportsmanship. He was planning to become the kind of person luck happens to, not waiting for it, creating the conditions for it. And that floored me the first time I read it, and it still does, right? That is unbelievable. That's a 15-year-old, but he's following some advice. And then when we look at the 8th pillar, it's going to deal with team and teammate development, not just his own performance, his teammates' performance too, right? So if we're looking, be considerate, dedicated to winning, thrive on adversity, right? Don't let play affect emotions. Be a calm mind and burning heart. Don't get caught up in the flow. So, very interesting constructs that he's come up with. Now, if you see his pattern, 6 of the 8 pillars aren't even mechanics, they're character, they're mindset, they're who he was deciding to become, not just what he was trying to do on the mound or in the batter's box. So now I want you to be real with you for a second. So I teach timing. That's my thing. Perry Husband's effective velocity work, the right now timing method, that's what I do. And I believe in it completely. But here's the truth. Right now timing would just be one pillar. It belongs on your chart. It doesn't replace your chart. And so this is where like the Brian trap happens. And if you've been coaching or been around me for a while, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Todd's and Brian's. Brian's collect pillars. That's the guy that's going from coach to coach, from drill to drill, from tip to tip. And they end up with 40 different things to work on and no idea which one is the foundation. They're like rich in drills, but they're broke in results. So Todd's have a chart. Todd's know which player is the foundation, which one supports it. They know what they're doing today and how to build each one. And I would say that Shohei was a Todd at the age of 15. And that's the point of this, right? So here's what I want you to take away from this particular lesson. You don't have to be Shohei. You don't have to get $700 million or whatever he's earning now in LA. But the tool he used is the same tool you can use to build in module 3, right? So the discipline he brought to it, that's available to any player who decides to show up differently, right? Your 8 pillars are going to look different from his 8. And that's okay. That's the point. That's what we want to have happen. So I have downloaded, I will show this to you here, and then I will put this in the uh, description area. Okay. Um, what we have here are the 8 pillars. And within those 8 pillars, there is a way. Let me see if I can do that. There is a way for you. It's an interactive. It's an interactive document here. So you can come in. I've given you a couple of ideas down below that you can use to help with your 8 pillars. By no means are these the 8 pillars, but it's an idea for you to come up with. Okay, so before we move on, in the resources, you'll find this document, this piece right here, right, and these are the interactive pieces that you could drop in. Okay, see where they come up. So that you can start to create your own open window 64 grid. Okay, and so I would want you to download it. I just want you to sit with it. Just start thinking about what your 8 pillars might be. Again, they don't have to be these, but you don't have to fill anything in yet. Module 3 is where we'll build it. And that's where we're going to talk about the 5 stages of the Harada method. So you understand the sequence before we dive into the tools. All right, so we have that coming up. Okay, let's talk sequence because this is where most people go wrong. Here's what I see all the time, and maybe you'll recognize this. So I'll have a player or a parent. They decide they want to get serious, which is great, right? Um, in doing so, they seek out a coach. They find one. Uh, they set up lessons. They get a plan. Maybe the plan has some timing work, some cage sessions, a few drills, and off they go. And then 6 months later, they're in the same spot, or maybe even worse. They've moved on to the next coach and the next plan. So think about the last 6 months of your son or daughter's training. Okay. How many different people gave them feedback? How many of those people talked with each other? How many of those people picked up the phone to call your son or daughter when things weren't going so well after a rough game or a rough stretch of games? If the answer to most of those is 0, your son didn't have a coach for the last 6 months. He had lessons. And there's a difference. A lesson is a Wednesday night in the building. It's 30, 45 minutes. It costs nearly $100. It's some drills, some tips, and you go back to your life. The coach moves on with the next kid. You go home and you try to remember what was said. And before you know it, 6 days have passed and you go back and it's the same routine. It's over and on, right? It's not nothing, but it's not coaching. So coaching is someone who knows your son or daughter, what he's working on, what breaks down under pressure, what what he told you last month about wanting to quit, and what happened the next day when he showed up anyway, right? Coaching is relationships that run through the boring days. They're not just lesson days. So coaching is someone who tells him the truth about whether his swing is good enough for the next level. It's not just good enough to get like a compliment in the handshake line. So most high school hitters I haven't had that. They're not Not really, right? And the window where it would make the biggest difference is open right now. And that's why I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce them to this Harada method. So the Harada method has 5 stages. And most people, most coaches, most parents, players, they skip right to stage 4 and act like the first 3 stages didn't exist. So let's walk through all 5, and I'll show you how to think about development. All right. So stage 1 is a goal. This sounds obvious, right? Set a goal. But here's the thing, there's a big difference between I want to get better and a real goal. A real goal is specific, it's concrete, and it has a timeline. I want to hit 350 in my first year of high school ball is a goal. I want to get better is pretty vague. Give the brain concrete ends and goals. And for me, I typically don't use batting average, but you might hear me talk about hard hit average. I am trying to hit 6.5, 7 out of 10 balls hard, right? We're not doing wishes here in stage 1. This is about getting honest with yourself. It's about what you actually want to achieve and write it down. And I just always find it somewhat humorous in the sense that people will always try to dissuade us from becoming an athlete, but they won't do that for an astronaut, or they wouldn't do that if you want to become a veterinarian. And yet, it's harder uh, to become those 2 things than it is a professional athlete. So I always thought that was very interesting. Okay. So I don't know if that's jealousy or not. I'm not quite sure. Stage 2 is purpose. What do you really want? This is the one that separates the Todds from the Bryans. Why do you want that goal? And I don't mean in an obvious answer like I want to play in college because I want to make the varsity team. I mean the real answer. I want you to go 5 whys deep. I want you to have the why that keeps you in the cage on a day when you'd rather be on your couch. The one that keeps you doing your routine check sheet on the days nothing is going right. Purpose is fuel. Without it, your plan runs out of gas probably around week 3. If you think back a little bit about times you have set out on something along these lines, typically it gets to 2 weeks and then it just fizzles out. So a player who shows up every day because he genuinely wants to give his team a reliable bat, that's purpose. A player who grinds through the offseason because he saw his mom and dad sacrifice to get him to practice and he doesn't want to waste that, that's purpose. That's what keeps a system running when motivation dries up. So go 5 whys deep if you can, because that 5th one, that's why you're doing what you're doing. And I've done this in the building, and I've actually had uh, players crying. There are some very emotional responses. And so never take lightly uh, what is in your son and daughter's heart, and because it does matter to them. Okay, stage 3 would be the analysis. Where are you right now? Okay, this is being honest, not wishful thinking honest. This is actually honest. And what are your real strengths? What are your real weaknesses? And I mean both, as a player and as a person. Are you coachable? Do you show up on time? Do you watch your at bats, or do you just move on? Are you a good teammate when you're not hitting well? So Harada's system included something called the 33 questions for self-reliance. I've modified that to a degree, and I actually think I have the 33 questions that we'll do in Module 2. So it's not a quiz. It's just a mirror, and it is uncomfortable, which is exactly why it works. So, um, so it becomes very telling. Okay. Nobody likes that mirror, by the way. So that's why I'm chuckling here a little bit. But if you don't know where you actually are, you can't build a real plan to get to where you want to go. You're just guessing. And that brings us to stage 4, which is the plan, right? And now the plan actually means something because it's built on a clear goal. It is fueled by a real purpose, and it's grounded in an honest self-assessment, right? Not just an assessment. And in stage 4, This is where the open window 64 chart lives. It's your 8 pillars. It's your 64 tasks. It's your routine check sheet. These are the tools that we will build together here in a couple of modules, like in modules 3 and 4. But for now, I just want you to think about them, and here's the deal. A plan built on stages 1, 2, and 3 is completely different from a plan that appears out of nowhere. One is building on a foundation, just like I use the right now as the foundation of our hitting. The other is a building that's floating in the air. It looks fine until the first storm, and then it's just going to collapse. Okay, and then finally there's stage 5, and I know what you're thinking. Finally, but notice something. Notice that action is last. Not because it's the least important, it's the whole point of what we're doing here, but because action without the first 4 stages is just noise, right? Hard work is not the same as purposeful work. Reps are not the same as the right reps. This is the thing I try to get across to every Brian I have ever worked with. You're not failing because you're lazy. You're failing because you haven't been given a system, or you're just not paying attention to your system, right? Stage 5 is where you run your system every day. Track your habits, you keep your diary, you do the daily work that compounds over a number of days, like 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. It's going to turn you into a different player. All right. So here it is one more time. We go from a goal, what do you actually want, to the purpose, why do you want that, to analysis, well, where are you right now in that idea of obtaining that goal? Okay. Then we're going to create that plan, and then we're going to act on it. Okay. That's the sequence. That's the whole course is built on. Every module we do together will map directly to one or more of these stages. That's why I'm leaving these up here so you can take a good hard look at it. Okay. Remember, foundation stages 1 through 3, most people skip. Execution stages, that's where the daily work's going to live. Okay. You can't build a house from the second floor. A lot of coaches hand players a drill. That's stage 4, right in the middle of the sequence. And then we wonder why that player doesn't stay with it, why they lose interest after 2 weeks, why the results don't stick. It's because the foundation isn't there. No goal, no purpose, no self-assessment. Okay, just a plan hanging in the air, right? We're doing this differently. We're going to start from the ground. That's what I wanted you to know today. This is just the introduction module. So that's it. You know where this came from. You've seen how Shohei used it, and now you know the 5 stages that we're going to move through. So in the next module, we're going to get personal. You're going to look in that mirror and start building the foundation for your own system. And then we're going to grab the worksheets before the next lesson gets underway. So I'll have those as well in the course. So just look for those, and we'll be ready to do this. So let's go.